During the third week, the embryo is a flat disc made of 3 germ layers: ectoderm, mesoderm, and endoderm. At the oropharyngeal membrane and cleidocranial membrane, only ectoderm and endoderm, no mesoderm. During the fourth week of development, the embryo folds in 2 directions: cranial-caudal folding and lateral folding. The embryo starts to curl into the fetal position. The endoderm is enclosed into the embryo, forming the primitive gut. Part of the endoderm of the yolk sac is incorporated into the primitive gut. The remainder of the yolk sac remains connected with the endoderm by the vitelline duct. Let's watch the transverse plane. In the middle of the embryo, ventrally, we can see the yolk sac. The lateral mesoderm splits into dorsal parietal mesoderm layer and ventral visceral mesoderm layer. Parietal mesoderm forms the chest and abdominal wall, and visceral mesoderm surrounds the primitive gut. More specifically, the endoderm becomes epithelial lining of the digestive tract. Visceral mesoderm becomes the muscular wall of the digestive tract. The mesoderm also gives rise to parietal pleura and visceral pleura. The visceral pleura comes to form the mesentery. The mesentery suspends the primitive gut into the abdominal cavity. The primitive gut is the primordium of the digestive system. The primitive gut is divided into 3 regions: foregut, midgut, and hindgut. At its cephalic end, the foregut is closed by oropharyngeal membrane, separating the stomodeum from the primitive pharynx. At around the 4th week, oropharyngeal membrane ruptures, establishing an open communication between the primitive oral cavity and the primitive pharynx. At caudal end, the hindgut is closed by the cleidocranial membrane. At around 8th week, cleidocranial membrane ruptures. The foregut gives rise to digestive tract from the pharynx to the proximal portion of the duodenum, and the liver, pancreas, gallbladder. You know, primitive pharynx is the beginning of the foregut, so the organs derived from the primitive pharynx are all derivatives of the foregut, including the thymus, thyroid gland, and parathyroid gland, and so on. In addition, the foregut gives rise to the lower respiratory system, including the trachea and lung. The midgut gives rise to the digestive tract from the distal portion of the duodenum to the right 2/3 of the transverse colon. The hindgut gives rise to the left third of the transverse colon to the upper part of the anal canal. It also participates in the development of the bladder and urethra. The endoderm of the primitive gut gives rise to the epithelium of the digestive tract and the parenchyma of the glands. The muscle and connective tissue in the wall of the digestive tract are derived from the visceral mesoderm surrounding the primitive gut. This is the development of the primitive gut. Thanks for listening. See you next time.